Hey everyone, welcome to the Roundtable with Vienna Whyte, Season 1, Episode 60. I'm your host, Millie Rouge from the band Vienna Whyte here in Edmonton, Canada. This Roundtable is a YEG music production. Let's get to introducing our guests for today. Our first guest is Leah Martin-Brown from Los Angeles.
Hi.
We have Chelsey Wild from Alabama and Jackie Ribas from New York. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for coming on today. We are excited to have you on here. My very first question I kind of have for you is, how is your day going so far? What have you ladies been up to today? I know it's a very difficult question, but what have you been up to?
I just woke up not too long ago, so just starting over here.
I already walked my dog for the last hour, but apparently that wasn't enough. He's on the windowsill just staring mournfully outside.
What kind of dog do you have?
I have a German Shepherd Husky.
Okay. That makes more sense then, for sure. Yeah. How about you, Jackie? How's the weather like in New York for you?
I just woke up maybe 2 hours ago. I had a date last night and I got home late and I was super tired.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome to hear. I quickly want to actually ask you ladies, before we talk about our topic of the day, I want to chat about your musical journeys. I want to hear kind of individually how everyone got started with music and what kind of brought you into music. So Leah, can you actually start off and just tell us a little bit more about your musical journey?
Sure. I've kind of been singing since before I can remember. I started playing guitar when I was like 11 because I was an only child at the time, and I was like, I don't have anyone else that can like back me up, so I may as well play guitar. And then I kind of started writing music all through high school. I went to university and did a bachelor degree and also a postgraduate for music. I had a band in Australia, and then I kind of got picked up by an A&R company, and they brought me out to LA at the beginning of 2014, and I kind of formed I'm in like a heavy rock band now called Evil Walk, so I kind of formed that, and I've just been in LA kind of working on that ever since.
Mm-hmm. That's really awesome. And how about yourself, Chelsey? How was kind of your musical journey brought you to where you are today?
Kind of similar. I can just remember singing, as far back as I can remember. We had music in elementary school, and we learned how to play piano in our music class. So I remember just being like really obsessed with it then, and I learned how to play and sing at the same time, which I can remember being kind of difficult when I was younger. And I started writing songs, played them for like talent shows when I was a kid, and kind of, I think, lost touch a little bit with it during college, and then realized how much it was missing in my life, and started playing again. And it's been kind of maybe a little more not serious, but I haven't quite given it up since then. So yeah.
Absolutely. That's awesome to hear that you're still sticking it through. I know it's hard sometimes to get those moments of like, I don't want to do this. I can't do this anymore. Yeah. So that's awesome that you're still doing it. Now, Jackie, I want to kind of hear how you got into your musical journey. I know you said you're originally from Brazil and now you're in New York. So I'm curious to know kind of how that came to be.
Well, I started at church, as most of singers do sometimes. Mm-hmm. I came from a family of musicians. My mom sings, she plays a little bit of guitar. All my uncles play any type of instrument, drums, keyboard. And when I was 12, I started doing professional music conservatory back in Brazil. Then started recording recorded gospel CDs at a time. And then I decided to come to New York because I wanted to invest more in an international, because I had a career back in Brazil. I used to work in TV as well. Oh, cool. But then I fell in love with New York and I moved here in 2011.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be very hard to move. Like, I've never been to New York myself, but I feel like it'd be very hard to not go there and not fall in love with just the busyness of the city and everything like that. So I can imagine how hard that would be. Well, thank you all for sharing. It's great to kind of learn more about you, because I myself have never met these ladies before. So it's great to hear kind of all of your backgrounds. So I want to chat about our topic of the day. So our topic of the day, we change this every day, so it's always a changing topic. But I want to talk about who inspires you. So I directly kind of want to talk about how inspiration can tie into our own music that we create on our own. So my first question I'm opening up to basically everybody, I'd love to hear a little bit about this from everybody, is what things well, first, my first question is, why do you think that inspiration is important for music specifically? So Leah, did you want to kind of start maybe and just tell us why you think it's important to have inspiration in your own music?
Sure. I think I think that inspiration is super important. It just makes things flow much easier. I feel like when I'm sitting down and like, you know, I have a deadline and I have to write something or I have to get this out, I find the song is just, it's lackluster. Like, it's just like, blah. And I know they say, oh, you can train yourself to be inspired. And I just think that's utter bullshit. Like, you know, my best stuff happens when I'm like, inspiration is so important because it allows you to kind of stop like being constrained by, oh, I don't know, but that might not be good, because you're like, no, this is going to be great, oh my god, and then you go off on the evil like mad genius kind of thing. And whereas if you're not inspired, you're overthinking it, I think.
Totally. And you said you work with a rock band, correct? Are you still with that rock band?
Yeah, so it's my band, so I do the writing or I co-write with it. So we have specific, like, we have different cycles. So we have the inspiration cycle where we do the writing, and then the recording part, which is a bit of both, and then you do the live cycle with the touring, and then you stop and reset.
Right. Very cool. So do you find that you typically get inspired from your bandmates, or do you find a lot of it of the time you kind of have to carry that inspiration for the whole band?
Honestly, I think it just depends. Like, I draw inspiration from everything, whether it's like a book I'm reading, or maybe I go hang out with one of my friends and something we talk about just goes, oh, or I watch the news, or, you know, sometimes I just feel particularly inspired because I had a great nap. I don't know.
I love that. That's great. You can get a really good dream.
It's true.
It's so true. Now, Chelsey, I want to know, why do you think it's important to have inspiration? I know you were saying like you had these kind of moments of you weren't sure if music was going to stay for sure for you, but what kind of kept you inspired to keep doing it?
I think I realized there was no reason for me to not have it in my life. I think a lot of the mindset is that you have to, I don't know, it's pointless if you're not this amazing prodigy, and you should give up if you're not going to be famous with it. Or I feel like that's a mindset that unfortunately kind of plagues a lot of the arts in general. And I think I just got to a point where I kind of promised myself I'd play music for the rest of my life, no matter what.
No matter what, yeah.
Unless if there ever came a time where I just didn't want to do it, which has not, you know, been the case yet. But I think as soon as I kind of made that promise to myself, it just relieved that pressure of even ever have to thinking about it not being in my life. And it just gets to be this part of me forever. So that I feel like just makes it that's a little less pressure.
That's a great mindset to have, because it's really exhausting to be constantly striving to be the next Beyonce, because most likely for 99% of the people that will not happen.
Yeah.
Not everyone can be Beyonce, but we'll try. And how about yourself, Jackie? Why do you think it's important to have inspiration within your own music?
I think it's that key, that sparkle that makes you write and communicate. And like everybody said, I get my inspiration from books, conversations, relationships, situations, ups and downs in life. I feel like I love writing, I love poetry, but I feel like I write more here than I used to write in Brazil, because I had to change my entire life to another country, another language. Everything is so new for me, then I can find inspiration in every single detail of my little life. So it's the key, is that sparkle, that strength that give you for you.
Yeah.
You know, make your music go.
Absolutely. It must be such a huge culture difference from Brazil and New York, and you must have, I would feel like at the beginning you'd have so much to say, because it's so new and it's so different than kind of the normal of what you would used to grow up with, right? So
yeah,
that would be
especially
really
in
cool.
winter. I'm not used to the winter.
Yeah, that's always a shock for everyone, especially when they come to Canada, where I'm from. They're always like, oh, I didn't know it was this cold. And we're like,
Yeah.
So this is interesting, because kind of both of you ladies brought this up already, but I want to know what things in art or music inspire you. So maybe just what kind of art or music inspires you. So maybe it's a certain singer, maybe it's a certain poet, maybe it's a certain artist. Leah, what kind of things inspire you that's not really necessarily related to your own music? What inspires you?
Um, that's a really tough question. I don't know. It just kind of
Putting you on the spot.
yeah, it just kind of, I don't know. It just kind of comes from different places. Sometimes a lot of the time I'm inspired by my experiences. So a lot of the music that I write is actually pretty much 99.99% of it is, but like I could give you a name for every song.
Okay.
Or I could give you like an exact situation.
I feel like I feel like there's two different types of writers. Typically there's the writers that write usually about like, you know, an ex-boyfriend or an ex-friend or whatever. But then there's the writers that are like, I read this really awesome book and then I wrote about it. So I totally agree with you. I think I'm kind of more similar to what you do as well, Leah, with my writing style. So I 100% agree. How about you, Chelsey? Is there anything other than music that inspires you? Kind of any books or films or art that you like?
I'm inspired by, I think, storytellers in general. That typically I think is the common thread in the things that inspire me. Especially with musicians, I love lyrics. I love when they tell a good story, when they mean something. I've written a couple of songs based on, you know, documentaries that I've seen that have just been such a neat story that, you know, inspired me to write a song about it. So really just anything that tells a story.
Yeah. Who's your favorite like lyricist, if you have one?
Oh, that's so tough. I grew up listening to we had a lot of good music in the home. I feel like Mary Chapin Carpenter is one of them. She had kind of her kitschy hit in the 90s was Shut Up and Kiss Me. And it's just so fun, but she's got these just really smart lyrics, and they tell such just vivid stories. You can just kind of listening to them, you can have these pictures in your head alongside them. I love that.
Yeah, it's a great experience when you can literally put yourself in someone's shoes for an experience you've never literally had, but that's a good songwriter. How about yourself, Jackie? Is there anything other than just your own music that inspires you and like outside of the world?
Absolutely. Books a lot. And one of the reasons I decided to move to New York, because I love biographies. And when I was very young, I read Billie Holiday. She's my favorite singer. Biography in the book said that she used to live, she was born in Philadelphia and she wanted to come to Harlem. And when she moved to New York and she started living in Harlem, the whole thing changed for her. She started singing, performing, she met her band, and she became like Billie Holiday. So like books a lot, like a lot of biographies, a lot of philosophical poetry books. It's something that I really like to read and then try to transform it in lyrics for music.
That's incredible. Billie Holiday is a great person to base an experience off of for sure. She's great. So my next question is, how do you take your inspiration and put it into your art? So I guess it's kind of the creative process. What's kind of your creative process like when you get inspired or when you're in that moment? I'll start with Chelsey because I don't want to keep putting Leah on the spot. So what are some things that, like, what's your kind of creative process like once you get that immediate hit of like, oh, I'm so inspired, I need to write right now, or I need to make music? What's kind of that like for you after that whole process?
I try to, if I am able to sit down and like work it out right then. I can think of an experience that was kind of my favorite, one of those like inspiration experiences where I was able to write a whole song in one sitting. That does not happen very often. And it was inspired by something my grandmother said years before. And in the back of my head, I knew I was going to write a song about it eventually. So I think trying to lock away those pieces anytime you get them. I have a lot of notes in my phone of ideas. I have like hundreds of voice memos in my phone of ideas just to make sure I can like get it when it happens. And you know, sometimes they turn into those full songs that you can write in one sitting, or you know, I've written hooks that I haven't been able to do anything with for years, but always just at least like keeping them. And I think they kind of have their own life, and they will sort of I don't know, I kind of just like let them be, and they'll complete themselves
Yeah, when
they're
they're ready.
Yeah.
Exactly. You got to let them
Like
simmer for a
unruly
few
children.
hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of artists, we have so many songs that we've just stored in the bank, and maybe we'll never do anything with them, or maybe they're meant for someone else, but they just kind of stay there for the time being. I
Yeah.
totally agree with that, 100%. Now, Jackie, I want to know, I kind of want to know what you think, kind of what that process is like once you get inspired, what happens after with your music.
Well, I'm kind of old school. I love writing, so I don't usually type or put anything in iPad. I like writing my songs using my hands and my thoughts. And it's usually changes in my life will always brings up songs. So just to tell you something, one of the songs I wrote here in New York, it was a day that was like a snowstorm. I had 1 gig in the morning in a coffee shop, and then I could barely go back home. The subway stopped, everything was complicated. And then the rest of the week I had all my gigs canceled, and then I was so like upset and sad and feeling so lonely. And then I wrote a song that's called Something Must Be Wrong, because at that moment in that situation, everything around me was kind of wrong, complicated. So changes or situations in my life, I usually write something. Either a fight with a boyfriend, with my brothers or friends, or a beautiful day in the park, or something that I was not expecting.
Yeah, absolutely. And how about yourself, Leah? What do you find when you're inspired? What kind of happens right after you get that moment of inspiration?
Honestly, I'm kind of a blend between Chelsey and Jackie. So like it depends where I am. If I'm at home, I'm just like, oh, I got to get a book and I've got to write it down, or I'll write poetry or do something like that. But sometimes I'll be out and about, or I might not. I'm a bit anal with stationery. Like each book is like, it has to be used for the right thing, or else I have like a mild, like I get uncomfortable. So like in that case, I have to like, I've got voice notes, things. Sometimes I'll just jam. I'll like open up my Logic or whatever and like record it down there. It really just depends on the situation and where I am at the time. I kind of just utilize whatever I can, because 95% of the time when I become inspired, I'm nowhere near where I need to be. Like
where you need to be.
Yeah, I might like it won't be at home or in a studio. It'll be like when I'm grocery shopping, or when I'm like out with a friend, or just walking my dog. I'm like, damn it, why now?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the beauty of like an iPhone, like Chelsey was saying, and voice memos and notes. Like, thank gosh that we kind of evolved that way, because otherwise we'd be like, I forget everything, I'm not inspired.
Yeah, those 80s tape recorders would not have been easy to tag around.
Yeah, I have those moments where I was like at work and so I have to step into the restroom and just try to record this idea really quick. Don't mind me.
Just in the bathroom, like, oh
yeah.
That's incredible. That means that you're an artist, though. I think art is great in that sense, because it usually will play into your whole entire life. Like, it's not just like a 9-to-5 job where it's something you go to, you clock in, you clock out. It's literally all of your life. So that's the beauty of it. So I just want to know, I have a question kind of that's questioning inspiration, but do you find that inspiration can sometimes lead to imitation too often? So I know, for example, if there's an artist that constantly is listening to, we'll just say like Taylor Swift, for example, sometimes it can start to sound exactly like the artist. So do you think sometimes being inspired too much by music or art can sometimes lead to imitation in your own music or your own art or whatever you do? So I'll start with Jackie. What do you think? Do you think that sometimes can have too much of a play into your own music when you imitate too often or are inspired too much by one individual?
I think sometimes there's a pressure that we have to do some type of music in order to be successful, or you have to be that commercial, or you have to write simple lyrics because it has to be catchy. And I was in the phase that I was like, I was not writing something that I was really really feeling, but I was trying to write something just to be like commercial, and then it's terrible because it's not you just like, so you keep listening some song radios that are playing all the time, and you're like, oh, let me go this way, but it's not really your truth, it's not really yourself. So I think there is a problem. Sometimes I don't feel like the inspiration, but sometimes you're just trying to make it somehow, and then you wanted to go to the commercial or everything it's playing on the radio so much that it can kind of lose yourself sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Chelsey? I know you're saying like there's some artists that you're inspired by. Have you ever had that feeling of like, oh, I sound too much like them, or it sounds like I'm ripping off their song?
Yeah, I think it's, especially if you're maybe in the studio or you're in that space of creating a record, and there are, it's a great tool to maybe be able to point to a song and say, oh, I love the way this bridge builds, or I love this particular rhythm of the drum. And you then, yes, might want to be careful of not drawing too, and I've done that before. I remember a song from my first record when I mean years ago when I was a bit younger, and someone was like, oh, it sounds exactly like this song, and I was like, well, we were inspired by that song, but I was not trying to make it sound like I was ripping it off. But
yeah.
I'm also really kind of the belief that it's pretty, I would say, nearly impossible to be completely original at this point in time of the world. And I think that goes for everything. I've met an artist who said she just doesn't even look at art because she doesn't want to ever incorporate that into her own art. She literally would not look at other art. But so then I don't know, what are you missing out on by not looking at that other art or listening to that music? If it creeps its way in, I mean, that's where it all comes from.
Well, exactly. So. And I think it's important to, like, as much as you can try and shield yourself, there is so much around you, and there's so many things you don't even realize you're going to pick up on for inspiration. And sometimes you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing that. But it's just, you hear so much in a day, of course you're going to get inspired or start to, sound like other things. So I think you're right that it's really hard to be original. But like Jackie said, if you're just being yourself, then it's pretty ezy to just stick to your own kind of music and your own style, what you like. But what do you think, Leah? Do you kind of disagree or agree with that as well?
I think I agree to a certain point, but I think it comes down to like where, like as an artist, how sure you are of your identity. So like when I was a new songwriter, like I would write songs that were just like way off the, like, I don't even know. I was like not using any of the rules of songwriting at all. And then I started really getting into certain types. And so there were definitely some songs that you could tell were influenced by things and others. Whereas now that, like, I think once you settle into yourself and like what you are sure your sound is, it is possible to draw inspiration from others and have it be like reminiscent of, but not have someone be like, oh, you've ripped that off. I think it takes like a lot of development. I know like for younger artists or for artists that are maybe changing genres, it can be a bit tricky because it's almost like finding yourself, as a person. I think the same thing applies to being an artist, like you're in your teens, you have no idea, you're trying all these different things, maybe you're copying things, then you get into your like late 20s or however long it takes, and you're like, oh no, this is who I am, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. So my last question for today is, what advice would you give to an artist who feels uninspired, and how would you kind of help guide them back into their ways of being inspired again? Let's start with Chelsey, and we'll kind of go that way around. What do you think are some ways that someone can get re-inspired?
I think the sort of the act of doing, I think creativity begets itself, and I think the more you do it, the more you seem to get inspired. And I don't think it's just when it comes to music. I mean, I get inspired by cooking. I get inspired by during quarantine making cocktails. I get inspired by coloring. I mean, just any of these acts of art, taking walks. I live in Washington now, so I'm exposed to these just really, I mean, it's just beautiful here in a way that sometimes my brain still has a hard time of like comprehending. And just looking at those things and trying to also make sure I'm doing new experiences, which is kind of limited right now. But doing things that scare me always inspire me, and everything scares me, so that's pretty easy. But
I'm
just trying to flex different muscles, do different things, go out on a limb, and that it also comes from the most unexpected places. So you just like follow the curiosity. Like you never know what is going to inspire that next piece of art.
Yeah, that's actually great advice. And I think even myself in my late 20s, I'm still like, oh yeah, I should try new things. You kind of forget that when you get into those adult years. You kind of forget when you're a kid, you just did anything, you didn't care. And now when you're an adult, you're like, oh, should I do that? But why not? So that's a great piece of advice.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Jackie, what would you say? What's your advice for someone that you would give who's feeling uninspired in art or music?
I would say look deeper, because there's always something. And I totally agree with Chelsey. Like, trying new ways of life, do something different. And I always tell my friends, like, write something. You go on a trip, write something, document something. Oh, take a lot of pictures. And 2 days, you're gonna look at those pictures again, and something will come up to you.
Right.
Or talk to older people, to different people, listen different types of music, read different types of books, watch documentaries, everything that can makes your brain work. It will bring you some inspiration. So the world is full of inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leah, did you have anything else you wanted to add, kind of for some advice?
I did, but I don't know if it's advice I should be giving young impressionable people.
Well, that's okay. We want to hear it anyways.
Well, so I now am sober, so this is not, so I really try not to do this anymore, but I found if I was going through a period of my life where I was particularly inspired, I'd try and destroy my life, so then I could draw from the pain. If I was too happy, I found I would have trouble writing. So I was like, wow, how can I fuck my life up today? And then I do it so successfully, and it was wonderful. But you know, I really try not to do that anymore. You know, don't, because you know, it's easy to ruin your life when you're drinking a lot. You're like, this is a terrible idea, let's do it. Whereas now, this isn't really a good idea. You know, I'd be like, this is boring, and then there'd be like a dude covered in red flags. I'm like, you're gonna be a great song. So that's terrible advice, and you shouldn't follow it. And definitely listen to Chelsey and Jackie. They know what they're talking about. Don't listen to me.
That's perfect. I love the two spectrums of sides. This gives you some perspective for sure. Well,
I try not to do it anymore. I do try. I haven't really been successful yet, but it's less of a disaster now that I'm soberish.
No, that's great. I love that. I think a lot of artists can relate, though, to what you said, Leah, that it's easier to write about pain than it is to write about a sunny day outside where it's beautiful. It's definitely easier to write about pain for sure. So I totally get that. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for sharing. That was actually our last question of the day. We are out of time, but we're so lucky to have had you all on today. So if you guys are at home watching this video on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you can be notified about all of our shows. We post 2 shows Monday to Friday, so there's lots of content to watch. If you want to hear this conversation via podcast style, search up on Spotify, the Vienna Whyte podcast, and you will find it there. Now, before we head out, could I get you all to again say your stage name and the social media of where you want our audience to find you? So Leah, can you sign yourself out?
Sure. My name's Leah Martin Brown. I'm in the band Evil Walks, and the easiest way to find me is going to my Instagram, which is Adventures in Plasticland, and you can find all of my shenanigans, slightly less exciting than they were a year ago, but they're still there.
Perfect. And Chelsey, can you sign yourself out?
Yeah, Chelsey Wild. You can find me on Instagram. That's probably my favorite medium. ChelseyWild.com too.
Perfect. Thanks, Chelsey. And Jackie, can you let us know about yours?
Name is Jackie Ribas, and also my favorite thing is Instagram, so you can find me there by Jackie Ribas, and there you can find me on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, ladies. It was great meeting you all. I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having us.